Okay, I think we're live now, so we will get started since it is probably 30 seconds to 1:30. Welcome everybody. My name is Anthea Sellis. I'm the Secretary General for the International Council on Archives. And with me today and will be presenting is also Meg Phillips from the Program Commission. And we also have our President, David Fricker, who is here with us today. So the impetus behind this webinar is really to give members an idea of some of the work that the governance committees and that the Secretariat have been working on for the past about 12 to 18 months. And what has come out is partly our strategic plan, but also to give you more information on some potential constitutional reforms and some that will be presented at an extraordinary General Assembly in Abu Dhabi next year. So the theme of this event is called Empowering Archives and the Profession, which is actually the title of our 2021 to 2024 strategic plan. So I hope you'll find this presentation interesting. I hope you'll find it informative, and to give you a sense of what's kind of happening in the background at ICA, which may not always be really made manifest in the hard work that the governance committees, the membership and the Secretariat and the volunteers within the association have been working on over this last period of time. So I would ask you please to keep your microphones on mute during the webinar. There is a Q&A at the end, and that will be on Slido. So you should have all downloaded the application. I gave you the link when you received the invitation on Wednesday. If not, I'd say either go on Slido now and download it on your phone, or you can also run it off of your computer as well, or your iPad, whatever device that you're using in order to access the presentation. I'd also ask as well, if you could just keep your videos off to make streaming easier. And we will also be live broadcasting and recording this event. So it's being broadcast live on Facebook, and we are also recording it. So just so that you're aware as well as part of the process. But I hope you'll enjoy the webinar. So here's the Slido app. So this is what it looks like. The event code is hashtag EAATP, so Empowering Archives and the Profession. You will be able then to interact with some of the polls that we have and also with the Q&A at the end. So please make sure, like I said, those are the two applications or two ways to access the application. And this is how we try at ICA to make our events a bit more interactive with our members. And also the event code will be shown on all of the slides as we go through. So then that way you can see it over the course of the presentation. So just a quick overview. We're going to have a welcome by David Fricker, the president of ICA. We're going to give you a bit of background about the strategic review and the results, which is really from ICA by its members for its members. Talk a bit about the actual Empowering Archives in the Profession, and apologies for the mistake there. It's 2021 to 2024. Then we'll talk a bit about the constitutional reforms that we've all been working on, and then the governance committees. We'll start with the PCOM reforms. So Meg will give you a sense of what's been happening at PCOM and what the outcome of those things, the outcome of some of those discussions. And then I'll look at some of the other proposed reforms that we have discussed at the executive board. So I'm going to hand off now to David Fricker, the ICA president, to give you his opening and welcoming address for the webinar.
Thank you very much, Anthea, and welcome everybody. I'm talking to you from Canberra, in Australia, which is on the lands of the Ngambri and the Ngunnawal First Nations of Australia. So I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Extend my respects to all First Nations people joining us this morning. Look, at first, this is a very brief remarks from me because we really have got some important work to do this morning at the webinar. But the main thing for me is to, first of all, extend my thanks to you, Anthea, and Meg, and the team that have done so much work on this strategic review and the review of the reforms for the ICA. The work that you've done is through surveys, it's through reaching out to the membership, finding out what the membership wants, how the membership sees the ICA in the future, and what sort of services and values can we create for our members. And so it's a very worthwhile and worthy endeavour that's been undertaken here. And what we're going to hear from the PCOM as well is some really creative thinking about how ICA's engine room, PCOM, can deliver more value for the members of the ICA. And I'm delighted with what we're seeing coming out of this exercise, that all of us in the ICA want this organisation to be more relevant to us all, to be more influential, to grow the profession, to empower the archives profession, and to help us all do our work and accomplish our goals in a much more effective way. And I think as a members association, it's very important for this organisation to be a welcoming organisation for us all, and to make sure that we can all stay connected, that we have solidarity amongst ourselves as a profession, but also I think as some of the personal connections that are offered through an organisation like the ICA, they can also be very rewarding and very helpful as we go about our work trying to solve problems and ultimately deliver better services for the public, because all of us in the archives profession are about serving our communities, serving our societies, serving our national government. So it's very important. I'm also very impressed with the way that Anthea, you and the team in particular, have really thought about ICA's culture, and the organisation should reflect who we are as a profession. It should reflect our values. And I think the work that's gone into our transparency, our governance, our inclusivity is just really important. And I think the work sets us apart, sets the ICA apart as an organisation that thinks about today's values across all of our members, and make sure that we are, above all else, an association that welcomes its members and works for its members. So I think that title, by its members, for its members, is very, very apt, is very well spoken. And as I say, I'm really very pleased with the work that's gone into it. But this webinar is now about what we do in return as members, our participation, our contribution. This will not succeed if it's just the Secretariat, if it's just PCOM working in isolation. We need to provide our feedback, our support. If it needs to be improved, we need to speak up and make sure that it is being improved. And I think I always say that the best way to stay involved in these sorts of things is through your branch. The branches of the ICA should be active, vibrant and dynamic. So do get involved in your branch of the ICA. And of course, when this comes up at the General Assembly, all through the other feedback loops that I'm sure Anthea and Meg are going to talk about during the presentations. So Anthea, that's all for me. I'm very much looking forward to the presentation now. I'm going to stay online. If there are any questions for me, I'm very, very pleased to respond to them later on. But I'll hand back to you now, Anthea. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. And thank you for taking the time to come. I know it's really early right now on a Saturday morning in Australia. So I appreciate it. And also everyone on the call who's taken the time in their different time zones, because it could be quite early, quite late where you are. So I appreciate that you've all joined in to hear about the work that we're doing. And in particular, David, he's had quite a few early morning calls in all of this.
Always a pleasure.
So I'm going to start off and kick off to talk about the ICA strategic review. And so it was launched in June of 2019. And really the goal of this initiative was to provide ICA members with the opportunity to share their thoughts about priorities for the new strategic plan. And this is really where the inspiration ICA for its members, by its members comes from. I really wanted the plan to really reflect the needs of members and to openly consult to make sure that in as much as we possibly can with such a diverse membership, we have anywhere from 1,500 to 1,700 members and institutions from around the world, from different cultures, different political backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, and trying to take in all of that to build a strategic plan is already really challenging, but I wanted to ensure that our plan was really reflective of where the members want to go and where the organization wants to go, and also where the governance committees feel is the trajectory of travel as well. So to ensure that we had the widest possible representation from the membership, we opted to collect data via surveys. So we sent out in June 1,746 survey invitations. We got 538 responses, which in terms of survey participation rate, it's 30%, which is actually really good. The average rate is about 15%. So I was really pleased, and the feedback was amazing. All the information we got from the members, all of those that agreed to kind of participate in other processes. It was so useful and really gave me a Secretary General and the Secretariat and also the governance committees, because I've shared this information in different forums with PCOM and EB, just an idea of what members are thinking about and how they feel about ICA, what's of value, what needs to improve, and perhaps where we need to stop doing things. We did 2 focus groups, so I really focused on our category A, which is our primarily members of the Forum of National Archivists, and our category B, which is our professional associations. We did focus groups with those 2 entities because I think they represent the 2 axes of our profession, which are the institution, the archives, and then the profession. And so by including these, by doing focus groups with these institutions or these 2 sort of bodies within ICA and membership categories, it gives me a good sort of overview in greater detail about what I'm hearing about as well from the broader membership, which was in the surveys. And so we also did about 15 semi-structured interviews. This was really with former governance committee members, current governance committee members, former active members of ICA. We also sort of interviewed other sort of people who have been on the periphery and have been but heavily involved within the association. I was trying to get an understanding in greater detail about where sort of improvements may have been needed at the governance committee level in terms of our service offering, in terms of, other different sections that we may need to consider. And it was, again, really, really insightful and really useful. So overall results, this is really, really high level. We only really have about 30 minutes to get through all the material and all the feedback. And the feedback was huge. And the team and I had about anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 free text answers to kind of analyze. And that includes, the focus groups, the surveys, and the interviews, to be able to try and bring that together into a cohesive plan. So there was a lot of information there. And there's a lot of differing views about where ICA should go, what we should offer, and where we should provide support. So I've tried, and the team and I have tried to the best of our abilities to bring this information together to create a plan that responds to as many of the member needs that we have seen as possible. So I hope that this is reflected in what we've developed. So really, when we look at the overall results across the membership categories and across all the feedback we received, so what does ICA do well? So we definitely very much heard networking and conferences was really a huge reason why so many people join ICA. They want to access the international network, and they want to access colleagues from around the world to learn and exchange with. That was incredibly clear from the feedback we got. Other things that members found useful were publications, standards, and communications. Now, you can see in the results, but whilst it's useful, there are still areas for improvement. So this is again where we were trying to sort of analyze contrasting data that we were receiving from the membership. And there was also a feeling that we did do advocacy and influence well, but there was definitely room for improvement from the feedback that we saw. Where ICA really needed to improve based on the feedback we were seeing from our members was operational transparency and accountability. There was a real sense that the organization wasn't clear. It wasn't clear in its communications. It wasn't proactive in its communications. It wasn't always clear who members needed to go to. I know the invoicing process is quite challenging and understanding when to renew memberships. So we've definitely tried to work on that over the course of the last 18 months. Also around, our governance committees, who are part of our governance committees, how are our governance committees appointed, what do the governance committees discuss and look like? And I think, there is still room to work on that, and we are working on it now and trying to figure out effective ways. And this is one of the ways for us as members of governance committee or members of secretariat to be able to communicate with the membership about what it is that we're doing and sort of some of the feedback that we're getting from you. There was a request for improvement around training opportunities. So we do have the online learning platform. We're always adding to that. We are always adding to the sort of course offerings. There's also face-to-face, and I know that's still an important part of interaction and learning from in different learning environments. We will try and continue to do that. Of course, you know, the current situation has impeded our ability to do face-to-face, but that's where I think our online learning management platform is really useful. Definitely, we needed to make improvements around advocacy and communication. So one of the things that I was hearing from the membership across the piece was ICA needs to be more influential. I think for us, when I was thinking about this, is influential where. You know, I continue to try and figure out what are the right tables that ICA needs to look at. For me, a big part of being influential is also the collaborative relationships that we build with sister associations and also new collaborative relationships that we build. So this year, we sort of joined forces with the International Conference on Information Commissioners. We joined the Climate Heritage Network. We are working more closely with organizations like Digital Preservation Coalition. We're looking to work more closely with Research Data Alliance, CODATA, World Data Service, and of course, we are trying to reinforce our existing relationships with UNESCO Memory of the World, IFLA, ICOM, and ICOMOS. And this year we also have had joint statements, particularly with IFLA. And then we've issued joint statements with our new and emerging partners as well over the period of COVID. Things that we should stop doing. So when I asked the question, it was kind of, everybody went silent either on the interviews or in the surveys. And in the surveys, it was very clear that was, please don't stop doing anything, just do more. So I think that there are still things that we need to look at about how potentially either we stop doing or we change the direction of travel so that we can better serve the membership and their needs. So another consideration as ICA we really, really need to think about is the distribution of our membership and the fee structure. And this is something that will be coming up over the next few years. The reason I flag this is a high risk for ICA. So 81% of ICA's funding comes from our Category A members, and they actually account for 7% of our overall membership. There are at least 5 big archives, national archives, that if they left ICA, we would be in a very difficult financial position. So this is definitely something as an organization that we need to tackle, we need to address. As a membership, we need to discuss this openly and develop ways to minimize this risk, because we can't keep going along this way. It's too dangerous for us. And it also, over time, it will affect the types of services we can offer, because if we don't have the funding, we're not going to be able to continue offering services to our membership. So it's definitely a serious conversation we need to have. As you can see, you know, about 54% of our membership are Category D members. It is our most volatile membership category in that, you know, members join Category D to apply for PCOM funding, apply for FIDA funding, apply for the new professionals program, but they don't often renew. So it's something we need to think about as we move forward. And also it accounts only for 3% of our funding. So there are some challenging but interesting, I think, discussions that need to happen moving forward. But it's definitely, as part of the strategic plan, something that influenced what I was thinking about as Secretary General. So this is the theme of our strategic plan. It's called Empowering Archives in the Profession 2021 to 2024. It's really built on 3 pillars. So the first pillar is about collaboration and network, because that's where members felt that that's where the big advantage was for joining ICA. But I think as ICA, we can do a better job in terms of facilitating collaboration internally and externally within the organization and facilitating that networking. The second thing is really about being more transparent, accountable, and inclusive. So really diversifying the representation within ICA in different countries as governance committee members, as elected members, as appointed members, especially those of us who work at the senior levels of the organization. How are we more transparent about what we are doing? How are we accountable to the membership given the funds that you all pay in order for us to offer services and do the work that we do? And of course, we need to be more relevant. And so So that really is what I call our external focused approach. There are internal elements to it, but really I wanted ICA's strategy this time around to really not only look internally, which into the organization, which it needs to do, but push out and look externally about what it is that we offer to our profession and how we can move the association forward and strengthen the profession and archives. So main takeaways. Number one of the main takeaways was under networked and collaborative, 87% of members joined the ICA for knowledge sharing or networking. And really the goal here is about facilitating collaboration around the network. As ICA, we need to have frictionless systems and administrative processes that are much easier. We understand, it's feedback we definitely hear. We need to make this process easier for our members around renewals, around we as a secretariat and an association can no longer be passive, only engaging members when we want money or when we want a service or when we want a thing. We also have to offer information like webinars like this, like other services proactively to our membership so that, you know, it's meaningful for you and it's a two-way exchange. It's not simply a one-way exchange. I think there's also something around clear volunteer expectations and better recognition of our volunteers. And that's something we continue to work on. And I think we're getting a bit better about this. We're getting a bit clearer about when we ask our volunteers to do something, what is the time commitment, what is involved in this whole process. And I think really the commitment from ICA is about strengthening its network and enabling more collaboration and to be more collaborative itself, both internally and externally. And that's there's a whole set of processes that we're currently working on to be able to facilitate that. So right now we're in the process of assessing association management systems to be able to make the invoicing process and payment process much easier and hopefully more frictionless for our members. Being transparent, accountable, and inclusive. Some of the feedback we received from the data was a simplification and clarity on the ICA structure and governance. ICA is quite complex. It's been around for 70 years. And I think what we've tried to do, and particularly in the annual report, which we published earlier in 2020, and there'll be, sorry, yes, it's 2020, and there'll be another one published within the first quarter of 2021. We've tried to include an organization chart to hopefully make it more clear. It's a simplified organization chart, but to make it more clear, what are the different parts of ICA and how do they work together? I think there's also a big question around accountability in ICA's decision-making and the appointments to its ICA bodies. And I think Meg will pick up on some of this for PCOM, and we're continuing to work on this from the executive board level as well. A sustainable financial model along with financial transparency. So I mentioned some issues with our financial model, and this is something we're going to have to unpack over the next year to 18 months to hopefully move the association so that we are less volatile in terms of if we have members, big members at National Archives that pull out, that the association is not going to be in difficulty at that point. And also more financial transparency. So making sure that we can explain clearly how we're spending members' money, why we've made the decisions that we've made around financial contributions, so that it's clearer to members what it is that we're doing. And again, being more proactive and clear around our communications, which I hope this particular event helps in that regard. And I think we've also been communicating a lot more via our website and social media channels. So a special thanks to Roman Lascano, who monitors our Twitter and Facebook, does a lot of work on that. He's a volunteer for us. And also Maria Paula Garcia Mosquera, who is the program officer at ICA, who've really helped improve our communications to our members, along with the rest of the team as well, because in the background, there's a lot of communications that are happening with our members, with Constance Vidant, our administrative assistant, Philippe Bruno, administration and finance, and also, of course, Marianne Daraz, who does so much around our IT systems and facilitating different processes. So really for us, it's about ICA will be more transparent, accountable, efficient, and an inclusive organization. So another thing I wanted to talk about is about being relevant, empowered, and empowering. Parts of the membership, when we asked them questions, were not always clear about why ICA was relevant to them, even though they were members. They saw more relevance in the sections and the branches, which is good. But I think as well, it's what is the offer from the top? What are we doing as an association to provide the best possible services across the membership? The members definitely wanted ICA to be more influential, wanted us to reinforce and support the profession, and to reinforce existing partnerships and create new ones. And I think that's how we also can be invited to different tables. What our social media manager for Facebook and Twitter noticed is that ICA is now also being tagged a lot more on social media, along with colleagues like IFLA, ICOM, and ICOMOS. But that's because of all of the work that, you know, our colleague Roman and Maria have been doing, and myself, to try and get ICA in the right circles, having the right conversations with different partners. And as well for our membership. So please, you know, if there are things and there are issues that you need us to advocate for, to work on, then come to us and tell us. And we will try our best to bring that forward and bring it to the right tables as well within the international community. So ICA will be more relevant for and engaged with its members, better advocating for archives and the records management profession. So this is I'm going to skip over this particular slide because I know we're getting short on time. And so I think it would be great if I just had like 1 minute of your time to look at what your thoughts are on empowering archives in the profession. So if you go to Slido, if you let us know, if you can just think of a word or maybe a sentence about your thoughts. I have shared the complete strategic review. It is on the ICA website, so you can go read it there. There's lots of sort of sub bullets that we really couldn't get into in this presentation, but we'd be really keen to have your thoughts on this if you're willing to share. So we'll come back to, there we go. It's inclusive. We've got one word. So just a reminder, activist, thank you. And just a reminder, this is the Slido, and then this is the event code, hashtag EAATP. Just gonna check the chat quickly. Vision, inclusive. So that's for the kitchen. That's where I will be once I go on leave after this. My mother has kitchen duty prepared for me around baking. Value to members, activism, inclusive. So that's really great. And thank you for the great feedback. And I appreciate it. And I'm happy that it's kind of responding, I hope, to the needs that you have all identified where ICA needs to go. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to move on now and see if I can get to the next slide. There we go. There we go. Constitutional reforms. So thank you very much, everyone. We have 2 more Slidos after this. So one with Meg, and then we'll do Q&A. So I'm going to go quickly over this. So ICA has been working on some constitutional reforms while we carry out strategic review to align both pieces of work. Both governance committees are looking at their operations, both PCOM and EB, and the reforms I will be presenting to you were approved on the 23rd of June meeting, and also the reforms that Meg is going to be presenting to you. So Meg, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Meg Phillips. I'm a member of PCOM, or the Program Commission, one of these bodies that governs ICA. I'm also the External Affairs Liaison for the United States National Archives and Records Administration, although at the moment I am not speaking for my employer. I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about how the Program Commission proposes to reform its own structure to implement this strategic program that we've been talking about and to correct some of the weaknesses that have been identified with the way ICA runs. Next.
Oh.
At the Adelaide meeting last fall, our Vice President Program, Normand Charbonneau, called for volunteers from PCOM to think about options and to recommend reforms for PCOM itself. And this is the team of current and former PCOM members who volunteered to work over this past winter and bring a proposal back to PCOM this past spring. So I'm just going to quickly introduce them. Vilde Ronga of Norway was the chair of the group. Deborah Jenkins from the United Kingdom was on the group. Laura Miller from Canada, Desi Pratiwi from Indonesia, and myself, I'm Meg Phillips from the United States. I'm the one speaking to you today because Vilde, the chair, has rotated off PCOM, and I stepped in to work with the VP program, Normand, and the Secretariat on implementation steps ever since PCOM approved the working group's recommendation at its spring meeting. So what I'm going to be talking to you about now is a proposal that went to PCOM this past spring. PCOM itself approved it with some slight modifications. And now we're really working on what we would need to do to make this happen. Next. The guiding philosophy of the working group's charge was to make PCOM more open, more transparent, and more diverse, in line with the overall ICA strategic review and the needs that we've identified as a community for this organization. I should also say that our direction was also to ensure that the new PCOM was small enough to get real work done and work together to lead ICA's professional program. Next. The working group was charged with delivering 4 recommendations. The first was a recommendation for how to handle representation on PCOM. In other words, how to make sure PCOM was representative of all the various parts of ICA, our geographical regions, our languages, our archival expertise, as well as race and sex. Next, we were to recommend a selection process for members of PCOM, which is directly connected to how to achieve diversity and what kinds of diversity to emphasize. And we've already noted that the appointment process to PCOM that we've been using up to now is seen as kind of opaque and mysterious. So we wanted to address that. We were also charged with recommending a proposal for how branches, sections, and expert groups, as well as other bodies in ICA, should relate and communicate with PCOM. And a proposal for how, or not really a proposal, but just notes on how the Constitution and internal regulations for the ICA would need to be modified to incorporate the recommendations that we were making. Next. So this is just a slide that shows you an image of the final report. And I'm going to move on because I know you cannot actually read that. But we did issue a final report in written form to PCOM in, I think it was April. And PCOM did vote on that and approve it. So next slide. The final report outlined the advantages and disadvantages of 4 different possible models, and finally recommended a model based on a combination of open nominations and open ICA-wide elections of most PCOM members, and that's 7 PCOM members, by all voting members of ICA. We anticipate elections every 2 years, so there's sort of a staggered turnover within ICA with 4-year terms to be standard. We also recommended a few specialized roles that would also have open nominations from anyone in ICA, but which would actually be voted on by PCOM members themselves. And so this is a little bit more like a specific job. And so it's sort of like a job interview where we'd be selecting people who had really specific expertise. And these specialized roles will correspond to PCOM's strategic programs. These are currently the Africa program, the training program, and the new professionals program. But the model that we're recommending allows for these specialized PCOM seats to change or expand to stay in track with the current strategic programs of PCOM as they change over time. Next. I'm sorry, back. In addition, the last bullet is actually critical here. I'm sorry, going back here. There is also a seat specifically reserved for a new professional representative to ensure that fresh voices are brought into the heart of ICA's professional work. And so we really think that that's an important way of taking advantage of the new archivists who are joining ICA and maybe getting involved in the active new professionals program. We end up in touch with such exciting people, and we want to really keep them engaged with PCOM itself. So the last bullet here is something absolutely central to the recommendation. The structure and how PCOM members would be selected through open nominations and elections is only part of the solution that we're proposing. The model depends on a great deal of clear communication, including information about the current composition of PCOM in terms of geography, expertise, gender, and so forth. In each election, voting members of ICA will have the opportunity, and in fact, the responsibility to rebalance PCOM's membership to ensure the best possible representation of all the different facets of diversity that matter to us as an organization. This process of open nominations and elections will be a great step forward to making PCOM, and therefore ICA, more open and transparent. It'll be clear why individual people are on PCOM, and it will be clear how you yourself could volunteer to get involved and run for a seat. One of the challenges the working group faced was how to address all the many types of diversity that were important to us. And we believe that elections are indeed the best way of addressing those many different facets. It's also the best way to ensure that the membership controls and adjusts the representation of all these different communities on PCOM to achieve a good balance. So if ongoing PCOM members are all from North America, for example, the next election could focus on bringing in representatives from other continents. Or if all PCOM members happen to be male, you could use the election to rebalance and ensure that there were women on PCOM as well. Also, if there's a gap in expertise on PCOM, and this is something we're going to have to figure out how to communicate about, but for example, if no one on PCOM knew anything about digital preservation, or no one could speak to the needs of under-resourced archives on PCOM, we could vote to get that expertise represented on PCOM. A big part of the communication plan will also be finding a clear way to represent the current composition of PCOM to all voting members, and also describe those weaknesses and gaps that we hope to fill. And one of the things that PCOM itself is going to need to communicate clearly about is how it can benefit from the networks in the branches, sections, and expert groups to encourage nominations to really fill those gaps and strengthen PCOM. So the election process will be one of the key ways we'll be communicating across these ICA bodies. So in conclusion, we're optimistic that this new model will make PCOM easier to understand and more responsive to the needs of the ICA membership by becoming more open, transparent, and diverse. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. So we're going to move to Slido, and I'm going to, there we go. And I'm going to ask for contributions again from our members. So how do the changes address the members' needs around accountability, transparency, and diversity? So I'm going to let Meg, I've intervened here, but I'm going to let Meg sort of talk us through.
So please just start entering words as they occur to you. We're going to do this in the same word cloud way. But the idea is if there's a particular aspect of the way ICA operates that you think this recommendation could address, for example, if you think it's currently opaque, or if you think it's mysterious, or any of those things, please enter the words that you think that elections and open nominations and the ability to volunteer, to say, you know, I would like to take part in the governance of this organization. I would like to help rebalance ICA to make sure that there are people from Africa or from Asia or from North America, in my case, represented in the professional decision-making of ICA. This was intended to help do that and to address all of those strategic reforms that were identified through the survey process that Anthea talked about. So we're really hoping that this recommendation will move us in the right direction. I'm clearly just talking to take up space while I watch the words that you guys are entering here. But so far, it looks like you're seeing it the way we hoped. So I think we're gonna come back a little bit later on to what the next steps are, to how to get from PCOM's own approval of this recommendation for how PCOM could function to what it will take to actually move from where we are now to where we hope to be. Thank you, Anthea.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And thank you so much to everybody who has put in some responses. I think it looks like transparency is a big one. Sounds like everybody feels that it's definitely moving in the right direction around transparency and representativeness and voices that need to be heard on PCOM, especially as it is our professional body. So this is really heartening because I know we've been working really hard on this for 18 months. So we're pleased to see that people. I like
trust in there too. That's great. And different perspectives. All of this sounds very good.
Awesome. So we are going to move on to other constitutional reforms. So these are other reforms that have been thought about at executive board level and which were approved on the 23rd of June. So I'm going to go through a quick run through and I'll try and give you some sense because they're quite detailed, and the documentation will be made available at least a couple months before the Extraordinary General Assembly that will be calling for in Abu Dhabi for 2021. For information, the Extraordinary General Assembly will be a hybrid General Assembly so that we can ensure that the most number of members can participate. I can't guarantee how friendly the time zone will be depending on where in the world you are, but we're trying to ensure that the most members can participate in this process because we really feel it's important that members, these are changes to the Constitution. It sits with the General Assembly. Only the General Assembly has this power to amend the Constitution. And so we want to make sure that the widest possible breadth of the membership can be present for that meeting. So in terms of membership, we have agreed to give the right to vote to Category D individual members. So that will definitely be a proposal on the roster. I think it's important. You saw from earlier, 54% of our members are Category D members. And so it's really key that we provide that voice to our Category D members. They pay fees just like everybody else. And so they should have a say in how the organization is run. We've created an affiliate membership status. So this will really be for organizations like International Conference on Information Commissioners, who've just recently joined as an observer affiliate member of ICA, and for some of our sister organizations, so that they can participate and we can have conversations with them and have them amongst us in different conversations that affect cultural heritage, that affect accountability and transparency, because archives kind of straddle different spaces and different areas. We wanted to raise the quorum of extraordinary general assemblies. So extraordinary general assemblies can only be called for two reasons at this point. One is to approve changes to the Constitution, or two, to dissolve ICA. So these are pretty substantial decisions that the organization needs to take. And we wanted to make sure that we ensured that we had the broadest possible representation of the membership. So we're going from 5% to 10% in the quorum for extraordinary general assemblies. We are looking to create now a new body within ICA. We're changing the section of professional associations, which are our Category B members, and we are looking to transform them into the Forum of Professional Associations. So this has been provisionally approved by the Executive Board, and you'll have seen from the General Assembly, we have a new bureau that's been appointed for the forum, for the Provisional Forum. But we felt that this was important because it's an important counterpoint to the Forum of National Archivists, because it presents the views of the profession as a whole. And these are all the professional associations from around the world. We are looking also to remove the requirement that the internal regulations must be approved by General Assembly. So we're one of the only associations. So if we look at our sister associations like IFLA, ICOM, ICOMOS, we're the only one that requires that the General Assembly approve internal regulations. This is not meant to cut out the membership from this process. Members can absolutely continue to propose new internal regulations at General Assembly, but it's really to facilitate the approval process, because these are really sort of internal policy documents for the association, and it's easier to transfer that responsibility to the Executive Board to fast track these policy approvals. But again, like I said, it does not in any way, shape, or form prevent the General Assembly from scrutinizing the internal regulations. Those are always public and made available, and from proposing internal regulations. So again, another thing that we are looking to do is changing the frequencies of conferences to biennale. So at this point, we have an annual conference model. But the issue for ICA, and particularly for the Secretariat, we have an incredibly small Secretariat when we compare it to other sister associations. And the issue becomes that when we have annual conferences every year, it can take up anywhere from, depending on the conference and who our partners are, 60 to 75% of Secretariat time, which means that we don't have time to do some of these more proactive events like webinars. We don't have time to plan that, in order to plan the communications, in order to plan sort of more outward looking events, and to do the advocacy that the members are asking for. However, so another thing we're looking at in moving to this biennale model is that on our off years, what we will do is that we would partner, ICA would partner with, say, a section or a branch, and have our General Assembly during that particular branch or section meeting to enable us to work with other parts and other regions of the world and other sections to kind of also reinforce conversations about what's going on within the association. So there'll still be partnerships there, but it just means that there's less secretariat time involved in terms of the planning, and because it is an extraordinary amount of work for us. The quadrennial congresses will remain, but we're only going to do a conference every other year. Okay. So another thing that we are looking to do is to change the title of Secretary General to Executive Director. So external organizations, particularly at the international level, do understand a bit more what an executive director does more than a secretary general. So we're hoping to clarify what it is that the secretary general does. We are re-looking also at job description for the secretary general versus an executive director. And that again will be brought to the membership so that you can see it and you can approve it. So this will not be done behind closed doors. We still have to actually present at least the job description, the revised job description, to the executive board, and that is in process. And then once we've gone through that, so the next meeting will be in April the 7th. Then April the 7th and April the 8th, I believe, are the two new meetings that we will have for executive board. Does still need to be confirmed, but that will be examined in detail by the executive board. And if it is approved, then it'll be brought forward to extraordinary general assembly. We're also trying to generalize and streamline the preamble. So the previous preamble that was written for the Constitution was written in 2012, and it definitely reflects where the institution was at that time. And I think it's definitely something worth revisiting on occasion as the association changes. And so we're trying to sort of update it in terms of where ICA wants to go over the next 4 years, and try and also where the profession wants to go as well. There's also some cleanup stuff. So there's just some streamlining. These are minor things, but again, this will all be made apparent. You'll have a very, very detailed document that will track all the changes that we're proposing, where we're proposing to move things, and where we're proposing to align things. And so there is, for example, a power given to executive board to propose to the General Assembly the power to amalgamate and dissolve branches. But that power is then not reflected in, say, the description of what the extraordinary or what the ordinary General Assembly can do. So just a lot of, this is basic streamlining stuff, but again, all of this will be made transparent. You will have this document months ahead of time so that you can look at it in detail and to ensure that the membership is comfortable with the changes that we're proposing. So in terms of next steps, I'm going to hand back to Meg.
Thank you. So there is quite a bit of practical work to be done to move PCOM from the current model to a model based on open nominations and general elections. So there's a whole structure around running an election that we're not currently having, and we need to figure out exactly what that would look like, what the documents would look like, what kind of information we would require from people who are nominating themselves, and what we're going to need to publicize to enable people to vote in a way that does rebalance PCOM in the way that we were describing. So you need some information in order to be able to do that in a knowledgeable way. So figuring out what all of that will look like is one of the major tasks that remains to be done. What we have been doing already is working out the roles and responsibilities of the PCOM liaisons of both types, the general seats that are selected through open election and also the more specialized program commission specific seats. Exactly how those people will relate to other structures on ICA, and what the overall communication plan for PCOM will look like and how it will fit into a broader ICA-wide communication plan. I think all of that is very important work, and there are a lot of moving parts there where PCOM, I think, does not want to be out on its own developing a communication plan without being in close contact with the other structures of ICA and the Secretariat in particular. But you get a sense of where we are and what we're thinking about and what remains to be done before we can actually make this transition.
So the next executive board meeting, so I made a mistake on the date. It is Wednesday, the 8th of April in 2021. And we're actually going to have 2 successive meetings because there's quite a bit of material that the executive board needs to go over in April. And there will be a few more proposals that will be brought before them for consideration. So again, as I said, the job description for executive director. So there was a proposal that was put in initially in June and had been discussed also previously during our Adelaide meeting in October of 2019 around reforming the executive board. The outcome of our April meeting was that the executive board would set up a working group to look at some of the proposed reforms, study EB operations, study at how we can improve EB operations and potentially the structure of the executive board. The outcome of that report should be coming out in April. We've received an interim report in the meantime, and executive board is currently examining the report that had been produced by the working group. So there is more work still in process. It is uncertain at this point if we will have any reforms around the executive board to propose at the Extraordinary General Assembly in Abu Dhabi. We may have to have another Extraordinary General Assembly in Rome in 2022. So just to keep the members informed that, you know, this is potentially there may be a few more tweaks to the Constitution than after Abu Dhabi. So this is what it's beginning to look like in terms of the Extraordinary General Assembly. We're really going to be looking into the logistics of the hybrid meeting in January of 2021. Though we have some experience now, we've had at least 2 hybrid meetings, both for PCOM and Executive Board, and we've also held an we've also held a General Assembly virtually this year. So I think we've got a lot of experience under our belt, and it's just a matter of how we're going to balance doing a potentially in-person face-to-face Extraordinary General Assembly with members joining online. So we're going to move to questions now. If you could use the Slido app for your questions. I think we potentially have a few that have come through because I can see down here that we have questions. Okay, whoops. So is the recording of the proceedings of the past General Assembly going to be made available? So yes, it will be made available. It should be loaded within next week once, because my tech guru, Marianne, is away from the office this week. And so she'll be able to make it available. It'll be available on the members only site of ICA. And then we need to have a conversation about how we'll make it available outside of that as well. So either on our Facebook page. Are there any, see if there's any other questions. Is the recording, so yes, that's available. Let's see. Are there any other questions that have come to mind? I haven't been following the chat, but if you could use the Slido, that would be helpful for us. Let's see, what are the main dates for these changes to happen? So first we have to get them approved. I think that's number one, but I think PCOM has a sort of transition plan that's being sort of worked on, if I'm not mistaken, Meg. But I know for some of the executive board stuff, you know, I think first we need to get some of these approved and then we can talk about timelines, but I know PCOM has plans.
The key thing for PCOM is that people are rotating off PCOM at this coming November. And I'm sorry, now, basically, I lost some time there. And we're talking about whether we could start testing the model as people rotated off PCOM. So have sort of a rolling deployment. As we learn more, we can get better and better at the election process, but we could start testing it very soon.
So let's see, we've got other questions. Could you outline or summarize the main points that are going to be changed in the Constitution? So I think those are the main points that I highlighted in that slide. David, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. Feel free to jump in.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Anthea. Now, look, I think you've done a good job in covering off the principal changes in the Constitution. They are about making it a more efficient and more effective organisation to allow us to make decisions in a quicker way, but also to maintain that openness and transparency about those decisions. I think where there's also a lot of discussion going on, and Rita Jianfu is online as well at the moment. We're looking at how the executive board also works to make sure that the executive board of the ICA can be inclusive and transparent in its work, and it can relate very well with the General Assembly. I think there was a bit of discussion in the chat as well about Category D membership having a vote, and I do think that's very important. There was one question in there about, well, won't the Category A members still have all the influence and the power because they're the big donors? And I look, as a Category A member as well as president of ICA, I just go back to Meg's presentation about PCOM. And really, in many ways, PCOM is the engine room of the ICA. This is where the ICA invests in the programs and the activities that it will undertake. And I think your presentation, Meg, has shown how PCOM is just structuring itself to make sure that all the members, like new professionals, all categories of members, that's where everybody will now have the opportunity to drive the program of ICA. And also with that vote, that Category D vote, and Anthea's chart about how many Category D members we have, I think there will be a much stronger influence for Category D members in the ICA as well. So these, for me, are the summary points around those constitutional changes. It is very open, it's very transparent, and it's all about members being empowered to drive this organisation ahead. Thanks, Anthea.
Thank you, David. So does it have to be either or for Secretary General versus Executive Director? Why not both? I think it's a question of clarity. I think if you try and name something two different things, I think it creates confusion. And I think the Executive Director position better reflects where ICA wants to go, and also better reflects the role of this individual within the organization. I think it is a bit more of a corporate role, but equally it's also about really sort of external partnership building. And I think I think it better encompasses what it is that I do right now and any of my successors will do moving forward. Will this material be made available in Spanish? And I think there was an ask around the French. So we will get this translated. It may take a bit of time, so I just ask for a bit of patience. We will. So if we're talking about the constitutional reforms, at least in the initial batch, will be available in French and English. We will do our utmost because these are quite detailed documents. So we will try and work closely with our branch ALA, who we have a memorandum of understanding with now, to see if we can potentially get this out in Spanish to be able to ensure that our colleagues, Spanish-speaking colleagues, have access to this material. This presentation will be translated, so it might take a bit of time though to get it up onto the ICA website, just so that you're aware, but we will make it available so that more members are cognizant of what's happening and the changes that are being made within the association. We have some new training plans for ICA members. We definitely do, both in terms of the Africa program. So that's in course, and we're looking at, it will also depend on the pandemic and how the pandemic evolves. I think right now we're leaning, of course, to digital. If we are able to offer face-to-face training, particularly in relation to the Africa program, we will try, but I think right now the emphasis really is on digital and offering digital services. The LMS has 2 courses planned, so we are hopefully going to have a course very soon within the first quarter of 2021 on managing digital archives. So that's a really important course that our team, our training officer, Margaret Crockett, has been working very, very hard on with volunteers. to be able to get that up and translated. And we do have another course planned for the end of the year, but I think we're going to wait and see how everything else evolves, because Margaret is incredibly busy. But we are committed to at least delivering 2 courses next year. And hopefully we will be able to give you more indication of what that second course will look like towards midway through 2021. Let's see, what else do we have? So I'm cognizant we're getting close to the end of time, but we'll take a few more questions. Happy to see ICA is considering its members' feedback. Thank you very much for that. Are there going to be other virtual spaces to follow up on these changes in 2021? So we're going to try, and like I said, we will make this available to the membership via the members only website once it's ready, and once the Extraordinary General Assembly has been called. We have other virtual events planned over 2021. So we have our new social media campaign, which we're planning. The theme of the social media campaign is called Empowering Archives, and it will be built on part of the strategic plan as well as our plan for Congress and the themes for Congress. So I invite you to watch this space. So we're working on that now, and there'll likely be absolutely other virtual webinars and events that will happen over the course of the year that will be offered by colleagues in the Africa program, colleagues in the New Professionals program, our online learning modules, and we are going to try and keep people apprised of what's going on within our governance committees, both PCOM and Executive Board, so that you know what the discussions are, how the discussions are evolving, so that you're ready for when we have our discussion in Abu Dhabi, or whether it's, you know, you're joining us virtually when we're in Abu Dhabi, that you're fully informed and ready to make a decision about the future of ICA. So I think I'm going to have to stop it there. But I don't know if there's anything else that David or Meg want to say before we sign off today.
I would just quickly like to say that I am monitoring the chat, and I see that there have been additional questions coming in through chat that have not made it into Slido, including a suggestion that Portuguese be added to the official languages, and quite a bit of discussion about the energy among Category D volunteers and making sure that ICA creates a way of incorporating that. So just want to reassure people that we do see the chat, and we'll consider all of your suggestions.
Absolutely.
Okay, and from me, Anthea, Meg, thank you very much for these presentations. I've also, like Meg, I've been looking at the chat as well and taking all that in. I really applaud the work that's going on to make ICA more vibrant, more relevant, and just keep us all connected and our activities purposeful. So thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone who joined us on the call today from all the different time zones, and for all the contributions you've made over chat. We really appreciate it. And we will definitely take on board any further comments that you have. And then, you know, Meg and I will probably take stock sometime in the new year, and we'll see if we might need to do a blog post or something just to kind of answer any further points that were raised as part of the chat. So thank you so much to everyone. I hope you all have a very wonderful day. I'm going to say happy holidays and happy new year, because I'm going to be signing off on my holidays after this. But please don't worry, my mother has plans for me for the Christmas period. She definitely will keep me busy. But thank you very much for everyone. Thank you so much for all of your support and for all of your feedback. We couldn't have done this without you, because it's thanks to what the members have said that we've been able to build something that I hope answers, and I think based on the responses, answers your needs and your wants. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.